I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Enrichment with the Gifted Guy. We're going to be learning how to play a board game today, and this board game is called Blokus. And as you can see here, uh, there are, just like any game, there are directions when it comes to Blokus. But the truth is that there's not that many rules with Blokus, which is why I like to teach it. Because even though it's really simple to learn, once you start to play it, it can become quite advanced with how it's played, the strategy that's used, and how you lay your pieces. The two main rules that I need to go over are whenever you're placing a piece, you must place it on the corner of one of your other pieces. It cannot be flush, as you see in the diagram there. So it has to be off of the corner. That's the only way you could do it. If you put it so that it's touching anything but a corner, then that's not a legal move. The only other rule to block is that when you place your first piece, you must start in a corner. And each color, it's a four-player game, and each color gets a corner. And it does go in a specific order. So blue goes first, yellow second, red third, green last. Once all four players have laid a piece, it goes right back around to blue, yellow, red, green, and continues that clockwise motion throughout the entire game. So when you're placing it in the corner, one of your squares must be touching that very corner square, as you can see in the diagram here. So when you start your playing, that's the way it has to be. The object of this game is then to build off of your initial piece that you first placed and try to get all of your pieces laid on the board. The object is, if you've been successful, then you have 0 pieces left when you are finished. But that's kind of rare to have 0 pieces left. And so how you score Blokus, or how you win at Blokus, is you have the lowest number. So if you placed all of your pieces but one that has 5 squares on it, each square is worth a point, and that means that you have 5 points at the end of the game. Let's say your opponent has not placed 3 of his pieces, and he has one with 3, one with 4, and one with 6. That means that he has 13 points, because you would count all of the squares. And so the goal is to place as many pieces as possible, have as few pieces left, and then the person with the fewest squares left is the one who is the winner. This is what the actual board looks like. And today I'm going to be playing against Mr. Bunny Rabbit, Mr. Duck, and Mr. Monkey. And I'll be in this spot. So we'll each take our colors and we'll take a look at what this is. So the order, remember, is blue, yellow, red, and green. So blue would go first. So Mr. Ducky would place his piece. Remember, it has to, this very corner, the piece has to be touching that. So he's making his first move. And keep in mind, each player has 21 of these different pieces, and they're all different shapes and sizes and numbers, so you can play all sorts of variations. So Mr. Bunny Rabbit's going to do that. I'm going to do that. And Mr. Monkey is going to do that. So everyone has gone once. Now it just goes around again. And so this Mr. Ducky, remember, you have to play off a corner, so it has to look like this. You can't put it up against it. It's got to be on a corner. And this person is going to go right here. I'm going to go here. It's on the corner. And this person is going to go here. Now, there are definitely different strategies that you can use in Blokus, and I'll go over those strategies after I show you just a little bit of this basic gameplay. But the idea here is that you can take it any direction you want. So now that we're back around, the blue strategy is going to be to cover as much of the board as possible as quickly as possible. The yellow is going to be to stay low over here, so that it's making a line this way. The red is making a line
this way, and the green is also trying to cover as much ground as possible. So each one has their own strategy, and there's not one that's right or wrong. You just do have to react to what your opponents are doing. So I'm kind of laying these fast, but you can see there's always on a corner. It's never, if I had tried to lay it like this, that would not be a legal move. It has to be off of a corner. It has to be off of one of my corner, off of one of the blue corners. So Mr. Ducky has to play off his own corner. Mr. Rabbit has to play off of this corner. So like that. One thing you don't want to do is you don't want to leave a lot of open space, because there's only so much room on the board. So you do try to be good with the amount but I'll show you what this can kind of look like. So if I make this move right here, and then green makes this move here, Mr. Ducky playing off one of these now. Mr. Rabbit is playing this. And what I've done is, even though I can go flush against someone else, so I can be up against their piece, and now I still have a corner exposed. So now I can take that corner and place it right there. So I can kind of weave through my opponent. And so one thing you will eventually want to start to do is you'll want to start to block your opponent. So keep in mind, so by putting this one here, Mr. Ducky has blocked this corner. This corner can no longer be played off of, and either can this corner. These corners are still able to play off. So you also try to kind of cut your opponent off and make your moves. So this, now I'm free in here. I have all this space to work with, but I can go back to here and try to do something down here. That, and see, I'm trying to use as little of the space as possible. And then green goes again, and now it's cut off this yellow and no longer has those corners available to it. And then, so each player plays what they feel is the best play for them, and this goes on and on and on until eventually what will happen is you will run out of space. So again, now I can continue on through here. Another strategy that I try to use is, if you look at the pieces here, there are some that are more than others. So I save my ones and my twos because they are good at getting you out of places. And I try to play the ones that have more pieces. So this has 4 squares, this has 5 squares. And so these 5 square ones, which are the most, are the ones that I want to try to play. So same thing over here, I want to try to play as many of these 5 square ones as possible. So I want to play that one. I have to go, I can't do that lay, because even though it's not flush against that one, it is against that one. So I have to figure out a different way to play it. So I'm going to play it like that. And so now I'm starting to cut yellow off. So yellow's going to have to figure out a way to get around this. So this is where the 2s come into play and the 1s. So you see, it seems like I'm kind of trapped here. I can use this 2 to get me over to here, and on my next turn, then I'll lay one that will clear me out. Unless green, which will go next, is going to block me, which he probably will, because that would make sense. So now that green seems that I'm making that move, going to cut it off. And so there's really, you can't go anywhere. Yellow could eventually do something like this, where it plays this 1, and then escapes this way, because this 1 connects the corners. So that goes on and on and on, and I'm not going to play a whole game. I'm going to go over some strategy with you, and then I'm going to show a time-elapsed game, which is a full game run at quick speed, so you see how it kind of looks.
As you can see, the game of Blokus is really simple to learn. You just play off corners. Really simple. However, the strategy involved can be quite complex. So here is a few points of strategy that the game gives. One of these being, at the beginning of the game, move toward the center of the board. The rationale being that you are taking up the maximum amount of space and preventing someone else from claiming that space yourself. Number 2 is try to place the largest pieces on the board at the beginning of the game, which I talked about that one before. You have some pieces that have 5 squares. You have some that have 4, some 3, and just one with 2 and one with 1. You want to place those 5 square pieces early, because what happens is, as you start to run out of board, there just simply won't be a place to put them. There's just not enough room to put some of those pieces. Number 3 is to take advantage of the characteristics of the pieces. They're all different shapes. Everyone has the same 21 pieces, shapes of 21 pieces, but within your 21 pieces, there's not one shape that's the same. So, don't just throw the first piece on there. Look at what you have available to you and find the piece that best fits there, almost like a puzzle. Strategy point number 4 is you want to have a way to escape. So when you're laying pieces, you want to see that you can play corners on both ends, or you can't be trapped by your opponent. Number 5 is, like I talked about, block your opponent as much as possible. When they're starting to move big pieces with lots of corners, is there a way you can cut that off? You can, by covering their corners, so that they can no longer advance off of that piece. Number 6 is to take note of the squares where no other player can play. So what that means is when you are playing and you have made a border, down below that border is open space for you. You can do whatever you want. And they can't really come into that. So don't play that yet. Save that space for later and go play other places on the board where you can take space away from your opponents. And then you can come back to your empty space and start to place pieces there. The last piece of advice is you have to keep in mind your remaining pieces, but also your opponent's remaining pieces. So if you see that they have a kind of a 5 square piece that's kind of difficult to place, is there a way that you can take the space away from them to prevent them from playing it? So those are 7 strategies that you can use. I also talked about using the 1 square piece and the 2 square pieces as means to kind of weave your way through your opponents and escape when you get trapped. So make sure you don't play. I wouldn't play those unless you're playing those for a purpose. So if they're helping with something, otherwise save those to the end. It also helps to save them for the end because they're easier to place. So if you have, just your two square piece and your 1 square piece at the very end, placing those is going to be so much easier than placing a 5 square piece. So what I'm going to show you now is a time-lapse game of Blokus that my family played. Normally, a game of Blokus would take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, depending upon how much time people take to think. In this particular time lapse, it's only going to take 3 minutes, but you see that different people are doing different strategies. So if you look at blue and red, they are kind of trying to bisect the board, to divide it in 2, to cut off the yellow and the green players. The green and the yellow players are the yellow in general is just trying to spread its pieces as much as possible. The green is trying to conserve space and not leave a lot of empty spaces so that there's more room to play pieces later. The problem with that strategy, of course, is that if you wait too long, then they'll cut you off. And so the green person has to try to figure out a way to escape. And you're going to see them kind of escape there and get into another open area before yellow goes in and tries to stop that. So the goal, as you can see, is to, as much as possible, you are trying to block the other, that's why it's called Blokus, you are trying to block the other player from playing their pieces, either by cutting off their corner or cutting off their territory, and just not giving them much choice when it comes to laying their pieces. And you do try to play your big pieces first, but there are pieces that make a lot of sense to play. So you may play a 4 or a 3 piece over a 5 piece first because it just fits better and it enables you to get where you need to go. But you can see here that blue is kind of started in one corner and it's almost at the complete other corner. And so it has kind of moved its way across the board. Red is kind of doing the same thing. Green now has all this open area that you see here that they created by keeping it really tight. And so they have to try to get as many pieces in that open area as possible. And there they just blocked a blue. The green just blocked a blue. Yellow is going. And see, they kind of changed their mind on what they were going to put. And so you do that to try to, you don't have to lay a piece and when you let go, it's your move. You can have a friendly game of Blokus where if you make a mistake or change your mind, you can do it before the next person takes their turn. Some people know what it is they're going to lay before it even becomes their turn. So they are, while the other people are going, they are trying to figure out what pieces that they're going to lay and what the strategy is going to be. So you can see a lot of times one of the players is holding up a piece because they know what it is they're going to play and where they want to play it. Although there are times where you have that an idea where you're going to play something and you get blocked by the opponent. So as the game's going on, what you see is that you're running out of space on the board to play your pieces. And so when you can no longer go, you're done. And in this case, red wins because it has the least amount of squares on the pieces that weren't laid. Blokus is a 4-player game, but there are ways that you can play with 2 players or even 3 players. So if you're playing 2-player Blokus, what that looks like is each player controls 2 colors. And they don't control, you can see there it's blue and red versus green and yellow. And that's because you want to keep them alternating. So player 1 will go first, player 2 goes second, player 1 goes third, and so on and so forth. And then what you do is you play both colors and you're trying to get all your pieces down. And then at the end, you count both sets of your pieces that haven't been played in order to determine how many squares are left. So, if the person playing blue and red had a few pieces left, they would count both their blue and their red pieces that were not laid. So that's how a 2-person game is played. You can't play with 3 people. So not having a 4th person is okay. You can still play. To play the 3rd, what that looks like is that you still go the same order you always go, which is blue, yellow, red, and green. And the 3 players go blue, yellow, and red. And then the green becomes an alternate. So in other words, what happens is the first time green has to go play, player 1 plays that piece. The second time that green has to go, player 2 goes. The next time it's the 3rd player. And they're just laying all. So you can try to, use some strategy to cut them, use that to cut it off, but the other person's going to have control on the next move. But that's how you play a 3-person game is each player is playing their own pieces, and then the one color that's left, they're playing it alternately.